Welcome to the Cross Canada Spotlight. I'm Mike Arsenault. Every week we take a look at some of the most interesting and entertaining stories produced across the Global News Network. First up this week, a small town in Ontario is coming together to raise money for a young resident afflicted by an extremely rare disease. That is the catalyst for hashtag Wheeling for Mark.
Basically, this year has been pretty tough with Mark. He had a pretty big hospital stay at Sick Kids where he wasn't expected to come home from, but by the grace of God, he's still here.
Mark Mose was only 5 years old when he was diagnosed with infantile hypotonia with psychomotor retardation and characteristics facies 1, otherwise known as IHPRF1. Getting to that diagnosis was a long journey. His parents started searching for answers when he was just 10 days old. And when they started to notice the differences between Mark and his twin brother.
To be honest, when we first got the diagnosis, it was almost like a relief because we went so long without knowing.
The recessive neurological disorder begins at birth or even early infancy. And typically those affected display poor cognitive development and most don't learn to sit or walk. Doctors told the family there are fewer than 100 recorded cases of IHPRF1 worldwide.
And then when you start researching, you realize how rare it is and that at the time there was barely any research on it.
And now friends and neighbors in the tight-knit community are stepping up to lend some help. Ennismore Cares 2022, a local charity, recently launched a fundraiser called Wheeling for Mark.
We have a GoFundMe page, and the way that we thought we would add a little bit of fun and joy into this challenge is to see if people can do a cartwheel, donate $25 to the GoFundMe page for Mark, and then share it on their social media and challenge others to do the same.
Money raised will go towards buying Mark a hospital bed and lift system for his home. Residents can also donate money to help with future travel and medical costs.
Sean and I couldn't have done it with all that support. And the fact that this is happening now it's enormous for us.
Over 400 students here in Ennismore have already kicked off the hashtag Wheeling for Mark. They're hoping to spread the word to other schools in and outside of the area. For more information on this fundraiser, you can visit the 2022 Ennismore Cares Facebook page. Trisha Mason, Global News.
I've mentioned this before, but it continues to be true. Stories like that hit me differently as a parent. I can only imagine the helplessness Mark's parents felt before the diagnosis, and there are still a lot of challenges for the family to face. But the beauty of a small town is that people rally around each other, and hopefully a bigger platform like this will add some much needed donations to Mark's GoFundMe page. From Ontario to BC, where a young man has been fascinated with his community's fire department for as long as he can remember, and the friendship he has struck with local firefighters who affectionately call him Winston is heartwarming.
Okay, you know that one, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna go up to the window and you're gonna push it in and it's gonna snap. Visor down when you do it.
For the first time in 2 years, Richard McNaughton is back with his buddies at Delta Fire Hall number 3.
Given the honor to be with the fire department behind me and help them out.
COVID canceled the annual open house, but the doors are finally open again to the public. For the past 20 years, he has served as an honorary member of the crew.
And I can't remember a time when Richard hasn't been part of our department.
Just after birth, Richard was diagnosed with Williams syndrome, which affects his growth and other abilities. But that didn't stop him from dreaming big as a kid, hoping to one day become a firefighter.
Oh, it's really his everything.
When I became chief, some of the guys came and said, hey, what else can we do and help Winston? And we were able to outfit him with some gear.
Complete with a jacket that has his nickname Winston on it, named after one of the Ghostbuster characters.
I don't think even anybody knows his first name. They just call him Winston.
I only was the guy that got corrected when I called him Richard. It was no, Winston, I'm Winston.
Oh, there you go, see?
This is his time to show the crowd what life is like on the front lines.
So I got to hold the hose and with all my gear on and make sure everything's ready to go when they need me.
Hey, Winston, how are you? Long time.
How are you?
Good.
He's just a real special person in our world, and he's loved by everybody here.
He's been treated him like a real firefighter. You know, they treasure him.
This is all he's ever wanted to do.
Halt! Thank you.
And the fact that he's, managed to fight through all this, all of his life. I'm so proud to see him here doing this.
It's been a long wait to return to duty, but Winston's finally back with his friends.
I've been with the company for 20 years, and it's been really good sitting down with the guys and getting to know them a lot better.
Doing the job he always dreamed of, if only for a couple of days every year.
Can you stand back 10 feet, you guys?
Jay Durant, Global News.
The pride that Winston has in being a member of the team just radiates off his face, and it's evident that the firefighters get just as much out of the relationship as Winston does. Staying in BC for our next story, where a group of fishermen got the experience of a lifetime in a battle with a 10-foot-long fish.
About 1 hour in. 1 hour, 7 jumps.
Along the Upper Fraser River in Lillooet, Steve Eklund and Mark Boyce struggled to hang on to their catch. It's their first time sturgeon fishing.
Gone downstream maybe a kilometer with him, and he's just fighting us hard.
On their line is a sturgeon estimated to be 10 feet long and weigh 700 pounds.
And Mark and I were like, oh, here we go.
Several times it breaches the water.
And when that fish jumped out of the water, the sheer size and magnitude, finally hit us. It looked like the movie Jaws, in slow motion when Jaws comes out of the water. Incredible.
2 hours later, success. The visitors from Alberta are exhausted.
It was a great sense of relief when it ended.
Of course they need proof. This was no fishtail. A few quick hero photos with the sturgeon are mandatory.
Pretty exciting. I mean, we do this every day for 6 or 7 months of the year, and that's what we want, right? Is everyone wants a 10-foot fish, but it doesn't always happen, and it did, and we're very happy and grateful for that.
River Monster Adventures believes this may be the largest one caught on the Upper Fraser, and they think it's more than 100 years old.
I mean, that whole boat, it was like a bunch of 6-year-olds waiting for Santa Claus to come down the chimney.
Moments later, the sturgeon is tagged and released, sure to be talked about for years to come. Catherine Urquhart, Global News.
Wow, that was like an update on the old man in the sea. And that's the benefit of going fishing in 2022. 20 years ago, Steve and Mark would have had their showdown with the sturgeon, and everyone they told about it would have thought they were telling a tall tale. I swear the fish was this big. But it's so much easier to have proof now. And I like how they released the fish back into the water. They also wouldn't have been able to lift that 700-pound fish into the boat to begin with. Back to Ontario now for a story on some very enterprising Queen's University students doing their part for environmental sustainability.
It's used in our roads, bridges, and other infrastructure around the globe. Reinforced concrete, a combination of concrete and steel, is a major polluter and accounts for 10% of the world's carbon emissions, far exceeding the 2% produced by the airline industry.
Where all the CO2 comes from is the processes of turning them from naturally occurring rock and naturally occurring iron into concrete and steel.
That's without mentioning the emissions that are produced by mining those materials. With cities like Kingston creating more buildings like high-rise apartments, researchers at Queen's University say protecting the environment against global warming is urgent. Professors Neil Holt and Josh Woods, along with their graduate students, began researching how the construction industry could cut those emissions at the beginning of the year, taking two main approaches. The first is to find a way to design structures to use less concrete, and the second is functionally grading the concrete.
Where we actually put the strong concrete where we need it, and strong usually equates to more cement and therefore more CO2. And then where we don't need that strength, we can use much lower cement concretes, which means we can again drive the CO2 down.
While research is happening in the Queen's Civil Engineering labs, it will move into the real world with help from the city. An actual structure with low environmental impact will be designed and built at the Kingston Fire and Rescue Training Center.
We feel that what we're going to learn here today through this program with Queens will help us in the future, and will help probably a lot of other projects nationally and internationally also.
The team at Queens hopes the demonstration structure will be used as a classroom and a living lab to educate students on low-carbon structures. They hope to start building the demonstration structure next summer. Erin Strickland, Global News, Kingston.
As a former Queens student myself, I really enjoyed seeing that footage of my old stomping grounds. I haven't been back to the city of Kingston since 2017. That's inspiring me to make another visit to the city sometime soon. And kudos to students these days. I wasn't doing anything nearly as impressive as utilizing sustainable concrete during my undergraduate days. Our last story of the week is a new episode of Off the Beaten Path. This tells the story of the Kinsole Trestle on Vancouver Island.
Kinsole is a really huge and wonderful wooden trestle that forms part of the Trans-Canada Trail Network and also the Cowichan Valley Regional Trail Network. It crosses the Coxilla River and about 140 feet above the river, so it's a spectacular view up and down the valley. The Kinsole speaks to that time in history when we just took on these massive projects. I don't think we paused really to consider that they might be impossible, and there aren't many examples like that anymore. The big challenge, of course, was the interruption of the First World War, and it took about a year and a half to build, and so it was first opened in 1920. The people who had timber on the west coast of the island, they wanted to get to market on the east side. There were other cheaper options available to them. So 1979, they finally shut it down. Day to day, we typically had 30 to 40 people working on the bridge. It still took us almost twice as long to repair the bridge with all of that modern technology than it did to build the thing in the first place. We restored to a very high standard some parts of the bridge and spanned between them with a new pedestrian way. And by doing that, we managed to save about 70% of the original structure by volume. These sorts of places really are awesome. They're awe-inspiring. They take your breath away. To walk out into the center of the span is a real treat.
One of Gordon's quotes really stood out to me there, that the refurbishment of the trestle actually took longer than the original construction, even accounting for modern technology. I wonder why that's the case. Perhaps the refurbishment was more of a painstaking process than building from scratch. I'm not the biggest fan of heights, but I like to think I'd cross the trestle if I visit Vancouver Island. Okay, that's it for the Cross Canada Spotlight this week. Be sure to watch Global News Weekend, Saturday and Sunday mornings at 7 a.m. on the Global TV app and Prime Video.